Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, there comes a moment in every legislative session when it is time to make the hard calls and start voting. The legislature has reached that stage as it shapes the state's future while facing a deadline. We'll look at the latest from Baton Rouge tonight, as well as from Washington, where the state's two senators weigh in on what they're up to. We'll also examine the politics of the New Orleans area's 2nd congressional district. A study by NASA says that the city is sinking. We'll explain why. Our Future Watch segment investigates the Zika virus. And on This the Weekend of the Bayou Boogaloo, we'll look at development or lack thereof along Bayou St John. Boogalooing with us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, lawpolitics.com. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Jeff Adelson, reporter, The New Orleans Advocate. We go over first to Jeremy in legislative action this week, and really what sort of took the headlines was an amendment that was brought forth on Wednesday tied to a really important bill about human trafficking, but the amendment didn't go over well at all.
It was an incredibly uncomfortable week at the state capitol. State Representative from St. Francisville, Kenny Havard, attached an amendment to a bill that was meant to raise the minimum age for stripping in Louisiana, and he had an amendment that would have not permitted strippers to dance over the age of 28 or over 160 pounds, which, as you can imagine, did not go over very well on the House floor. Representative Jolie Stokes, among many others, Representative Stokes really just exploded on the floor, said that she's seen way too many examples of sexism at the Capitol, that it was inappropriate. And, it was not one of the brightest days for the Louisiana legislature. You had elected officials actually dropping single dollar bills in the well of the Capitol. And, that story just broke nationally, I mean, within hours. The next day, it was the topic of conversation on the Senate floor. All of the events and cocktail parties this week, it was the topic of conversation. And a TV reporter from Baton Rouge convinced Kenny Havard to have a press conference this week, and he refused to apologize, saying that he doesn't need to be politically correct, that it was a general neutral amendment. And really the most amazing thing about this is we see these amendments where people try to, I guess, lighten the mood. They believe it's a joke. But this one was actually drafted. You can still go on the legislature's website and pull up this amendment and read it.
So he meant it.
He meant it.
No, he withdrew it right away.
He withdrew it. Yeah, he did. There was no vote on it. He did end up voting for the legislation to raise the minimum age. But what really made this even more uncomfortable is that it happened less than 24 hours before a House committee voted down legislation that would have brought about equal pay and to address that gender gap for salaries.
Didn't he say he introduced it to satirize government over regulation?
He did, but you didn't hear that when he introduced the amendment. And instead, someone asked him why he was doing it, and he said that he was worried about the health of these young women.
Well, he also voted for the legislation.
He did
support
the legislation. And this is continuing to play out. We're seeing Representative Helena Moreno has launched a campaign effective today that focuses on the importance of women's lives and what they're facing at the Capitol, the fact that half the population in the state are women, but only 12% of the seats in the legislature are held by women.
The lowest in the nation, is that correct?
Right, and so I think we're going to continue to hear more about this as we move forward. And you got a lot of groups out there who are trying to keep the equal pay issue alive. And I think that this is something that they're talking about is what happened on the floor with Kenny Havard.
Well, you had people on both sides of the aisle literally about this. Some saying, yes, I've seen sexism. Others saying, no, I really haven't. Everybody's been a gentleman. In terms of women saying people have been always a gentleman to me. You've been up there. You're up there all the time. I mean, what do you feel? What do you sense? Is there this boys' club where women are not treated with respect?
I've never seen a woman treated with disrespect that I've seen with my own eyes or heard with my own ears. But I certainly think that it seems to be either more difficult for a woman to get elected to the Louisiana legislature. They only hold 12% of the seats, despite that there are some quality candidates out there running. But I've never seen anything with my own eyes. But you do hear the stories out there that women are faced with some greater difficulties than some of the men at the Capitol.
Well, have things settled down a little bit in this regard, though, since the tempers were really flaring and blood was up?
I mean, it was still kind of a topic today, even on social media. With like I said, Representative Moreno has started a campaign that focuses more on equal pay, but you know, she's also one of the legislators who have gotten up and spoken about this. We've also heard from men that serve in the legislature. Conrad Appel in the state Senate got up and kind of shot down Kenny Havard's remarks as well.
Is this kind of joke amendment a typical thing to do?
It's not unusual. Taking it that far, I would say is. We usually don't see anyone kind of step outside the box that much, but there are folks who will file amendments to kind of lighten the mood, and but they usually don't offend people as much as that one did.
But they take up valuable time, and as Errol wrote in the lead-in, we're on a deadline right now for facing some really important issues for the state, serious budget matters. And we don't have time for these kind of amendments, do we?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a intense environment. And I think that one of the hallmarks of being from Louisiana is having a sense of humor. And so we do see these amendments that are funny, that are on the lighter side, and they don't go as far as Kenny Havard's, but you know, that someone will propose an amendment, make a quick joke, takes a few seconds and moves along. And quite frankly, I mean, this session, there's nothing really left but the budget. I mean, most of the major pieces of legislation have moved.
Or been signed, like the medical marijuana. I want you to touch on that real quick before we run out of time.
Right, the medical marijuana bill has been signed into law by the governor. It expands the serious medical conditions you have to get the medical marijuana. You know, the framework for all of this was passed last year, so it was already in law. What they did was expand the folks who can get it. We saw a lot of parents with children who have seizures showing up at the Capitol, and it's not going to be marijuana in its raw form. You're not going to be able to break it up and smoke it, and you'll only be able to use it as an oil or as an edible. So it's tightly confined. There are some restrictions, and there's another bill that is still moving right now that creates a permit process that's kind of a companion piece of legislation.
Okay. All right. As you said, the budget, though, is really the matters that are beforehand, and the regular session ends?
It ends on June 6th at 6 p.m., the sixth month on the sixth day at 6 p.m., 666. I don't know if that's the opening of the gates of hell on the last day of regular session, but...
Well, it's coming quick. You know, that's all, and they have a lot to resolve. A special session is going to come...
That's right,
June 6th. Special session coming right after regular? Is that
that's
still
what
on
the governor
books?
says. We just don't know when yet.
All right, Jeremy, thanks a lot. Going over to Jeff right now, and there was a report saying New Orleans sinking. Well, we know that. I mean, everybody experiences that all the time. There's something special about this report, particularly in the way it was done.
Yeah, this is a really interesting new study, and it was done by the lead researcher is with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. There was some LSU researcher involved as well. And what this study did was it used basically a Learjet to fly over the city at two different times, one in 2009, once in 2012, and use equipment in the jet to get a sense of exactly how much of a change there had been in ground elevation. And this is this is the first major area-wide study that's been done entirely after Hurricane Katrina. So that's interesting in and of itself. The second thing is this was able to cover both a much wider area. The research goes all the way from New Orleans east to include some areas out by Norco, and do it on a very, very fine level. They could tell millimeter changes in subsidence in areas of about 20 feet wide. So you could really, the researchers even talked about how they got really worried about some results they had until they realized that it was a hole in someone's roof. And that's, so that's how sort of fine-grained this can get.
What's the most alarming bit of information that we've found out, would you say?
Well, one of the most dramatic findings in the study was that if you look at Norco and you look at the Michoud industrial area, both of those are the most dramatic subsidence in the region. Michoud's subsiding at about 1.18 inches per year. The area around Norco, it's about 1.6 inches per year. And that's compared to about a quarter of an inch if you look at the vast majority of the New Orleans area. And what the researchers think is that this bolsters the claim that the amount of water that those industrial uses are extracting from the ground is contributing in some ways to the amount that the areas are sinking. They say there's further research that's needed to confirm that. But
What about just in regular neighborhoods throughout our area?
well, again, if you look at the city as a whole, the vast majority is sinking at about a quarter inch a year. But there's some hot spots. If you look, for example, along the river at the Central Business District, Marigny, Bywater, Ninth Ward, Lower Ninth Ward rather, those areas are sinking at almost or more than 3/4 of an inch a year.
Or along the river. I mean, that's our sliver area. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
That's
And
surprising to hear.
it's very surprising because the map almost looks the opposite of, I think, what most people expect, which is that the areas of built land out by the lake, those are subsiding more slowly than the areas by the river. And the researchers said they don't really have a clear thesis for why that's happening. There's a lot of, as you said, everyone in New Orleans knows about the effects of subsidence. And
Just drive.
Yeah, exactly. Potholes and foundations and everything else.
Too. Yeah, right.
And everyone knows, or lots of people know anyway, that a lot of it has to do with the amount of water that's being taken out of the ground and the lack of sediment that's allowed to come in because of the levees.
So it's pumping to keep us dry, and
Yep.
the sediments to keep the water from, the levees to keep the water from coming in.
Right.
But there's also the urban water plan. So does that do you think this whole study sort of supports what the urban water plan is saying, which is keep some of this water underneath?
I think it definitely bolsters what the urban water plan is doing. And for those who might not know about it, this is a multi-billion-dollar plan that's been proposed by some advocates that argues against pumping water out of the city and instead finding ways to get the water back into the soil, things like rain gardens, and they're called bioswales, which get the water in. There's a lot of support for that, obviously, but not a lot of money. And some of those proposals are going to be instituted in Gentilly through a federal grant.
Okay, that's a topic we will continue to be talking about, I'm sure.
Fair enough.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, over to you, Don. Future Watch, Zika virus. That's a scary thing that's out there.
It is a little scary. Actually, it's a lot scary for a certain segment of the population, and that would be pregnant women. Zika virus was first identified in the 1940s in Africa. It's come to the United States now, and it's mostly coming through, it's being imported by travelers from Latin America and the Caribbean. People who have gone on vacation, gotten a bite from an infected mosquito there, and then brought the virus back with them. And then they could get a bite from a mosquito that then transmits it from person to person. Right now, there are only 4 confirmed cases in the state of Louisiana. And I talked to Dr. Errol, the state epidemiologist. He says the best way to prevent the spread of this virus is really if you see symptoms that you might have Zika virus, which would be fever for a few days, a rash, some joint pain, and conjunctivitis, to go to the doctor and get tested. Because if you have it, then they will roll out more mosquito control and spray for mosquitoes specifically in your area. Because the risk to a pregnant woman catching it is that it does cross the uterus and it causes microencephalitis in the brain of the baby. It causes a smaller, shrinking skull in the baby, so the brain can't fully develop, and babies are born severely birth defected because of it. Unfortunately, 4 out of 5 people who get Zika virus won't show any signs or symptoms. Only 1 in 5 do. So Dr. Richard said we all have a role to play in this, and it is, as they say, not in my house, not in my yard, not on my skin. I mean, not in my house, that means protect your own home from mosquitoes by using screens and making sure there aren't holes that mosquitoes can travel through. Not in my yard, empty the buckets and small containers that collect water. The mosquitoes that tend to spread this virus are daytime biters that breed in that standing water. After we've had a rainstorm and a little toy in the backyard or a saucer under a flower pot fills up. Well, that's all a mosquito needs to breed in. And not on my skin. That means wear long sleeves and long pants. If it's not too hot, wear repellent if it is too hot, to just prevent the mosquito bites, because you might not know if you have Zika virus, and none of us here are pregnant women, but we could spread the disease to a pregnant woman and therefore cause a lot of problems.
But for those who are not pregnant women, what could be the implications to them?
Just those flu-like symptoms. There could be one complication other than a week of not feeling so great, and that is getting Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is when you lose some myelin sheath from the nerves in your brain and cause real problems with movement and muscles that can be long-lasting. So there is one severe complication for non-pregnant people, but it's mostly a pregnant woman's issue. And there's, we live in South Louisiana where mosquitoes
hard
are
to avoid
bad.
mosquitoes,
It is very hard to avoid. There's a lot more confirmed Zika virus in Florida and in Texas, so it's all around us. All it takes is, a few of us travel to Florida, pick it up, bring it back. Dr. Richard doesn't think we'll have a widespread outbreak across the United States, something significant, but the President Obama today just asked for more money to fight it. The CDC is now monitoring more than 300 pregnant women, both stateside and in Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories. So it is becoming a big deal. And throughout the summer, you'll probably hear those warning alerts. Please do what you can to prevent the mosquitoes from breeding in your own yard so that they don't hurt other people.
And pregnant women are being cautioned about traveling to certain areas.
They're being
too.
cautioned, and they're also being, I've had 3 children. I was never tested for Zika virus when I was pregnant, but that's a new precaution along the way.
Okay. All right, Don. Thanks a lot. All right, Errol, over to you right now. Bayou St John, the Boogaloo Festival going on this weekend, right?
Yeah, because of this festival, it just brings to mind Bayou St John, which to me is an underutilized title. The topic, it's one of the great resources in the city. And over the years, it's been pretty much put into a straitjacket. It could be so much more. I mean, this was the highway from the lake into the city, into the old port of the city. Right. Some of the early settlements in New Orleans were along Bayou St John, not only among Indians, but among some of the first European settlers. So it's very, very historic area there. Back in the days of ancient voodoo ceremonies. And over time, they kind of took away the mystique from Bayou St John. They put it in a straitjacket. It only goes as far as from the lake to what we may remember as being the old Mercy Hospital now. And so it's been shortened. It's the banks just kind of hold it in place. And you get the feeling that over the years, there's always been a little bit of political resentment to wanting to develop it too much, to be overcrowded or overpopulated. And so even when bridges were built, if you look at the bridges, that they're not high bridges. And so there were bridges designed not to allow big craft with big, sailboats or anything. So I guess somebody with a skiff or something can use it. So it could be a lot more than it's become, but still it's pleasant. It's a nice thing to do. And the Boogaloo, after all these years, which is a fairly new festival, is probably the biggest event along Bayou St John. And so this happens once a year, so it brings people. Zulu last week had a festival, so you see that. And then there's the Greek festival. So there's 3 festivals along Bayou St John, which is more than it's ever had. And then in June, there's still on that bridge by Cabrini, there's on St. John's Eve, there's this wonderful voodoo tribute. But you just wish that, I don't know, at least I personally do, that just more can be done with it, with plantings and recreation and more facilities and all that.
Well,
but
like you said, this weekend certainly it will be used, and people get out there with their kayaks and their canoes and enjoy the water just directly from the water. But there was a bit of a controversy regarding a fence that went up, then quickly came down. Can you tell us quickly about that?
Yeah, this may be one of the quickest controversies we've had. People early this week started basically taking to social media as a fence was erected as part of Bayou Boogaloo, and people were complaining because one of the big draws of the festival is that it's open and sort of welcoming, and it created this huge backlash, including from Councilwoman Susan Guidry, who immediately started saying on social media that she wanted it to come down, and by the next morning, organizers had reversed course and started taking it down.
Why was it up in the first place?
The organizers haven't given a sort of complete answer to that. They've not talked to any members of the media. They have put up posts on Facebook that have sort of all hinted at the idea that, or there's at least an implication that there was a fear of people bringing outside food and beverage in and not patronizing the vendors, and some safety concerns about people getting in the bayou. But
well, the fence is down, so it's all open as it's been in the past. Okay, Jeff, thanks a lot. Okay, Jeremy, over to you. Let's talk about senators right now. If you can sort of quickly tell us the conversation you had where there are two sitting senators. What are they up to?
They're both facing transitional periods right now. David Vitter, after 2 6-year terms, is on his way out. He'll be done later this year. Whereas Bill Cassidy, halfway through his first term, is about to become Louisiana's senior senator. Both of them have decided to back Donald Trump. Both of them have decided to stay out of all the federal races this fall, except for a North Louisiana congressional seat. That's where David Vitter is going to be supporting State Representative Mike Johnson. But they also are both involved with critical, important legislation, which we always hear our congressional members saying they have this bill or that bill. Those bills never get voted on. But in Bill Cassidy's case, he's got a commitment from the leadership to get a vote on a revenue sharing amendment very soon, possibly in the next few weeks. David Vitter, meanwhile, is the driving force behind the Water Resources Development Act. That's an extremely important bill to Louisiana every single year for flood protection, hurricane protection, and he's the driving force behind that out of everyone on the Hill, and he's working on a bipartisan basis on that.
So how important is it for us to have a strong delegation? I mean, people who have been there for a while. As you said, Senator Cassidy, halfway through his first term, is going to be our senior senator.
Right, not only that, but you have the race to replace David Vitter, and you have 2 sitting congressmen, senior congressmen, who are running for that seat, and neither of them are guaranteed to win. So we very well could end this year seeing David Vitter, John Fleming, and Charles Boustany all exiting the Hill, all with 3 freshman members going up into our delegation.
And the piece that you wrote, you said that both of our sitting senators said, well, it really doesn't matter.
They don't. David Vitter is in favor of term limits. He thinks that what you gain through fresh blood is more than what you lose through losing seniority. Yeah. And Bill Cassidy said that it's more important about your ideas and representing Louisiana. But we still have the majority whip right now, so that's a pretty big deal.
That's pretty strong. Errol?
No, we haven't heard much from Vitter since the night he lost the gubernatorial election and said then that he wasn't going to run for senator. What's the feeling? Does he still have his the drive? Is his heart still in it, or is he just finishing out his term?
I think his heart is still in politics and public service. Obviously, he said he wanted to get involved in the congressional race in Shreveport. As far as what he's going to do next, he said he's keeping his options open, but there was an unsourced story from Politico that suggested that he's looking at a lobbying gig once he does leave the Senate.
And then also for the race, because there are a bunch of folks who are seeking to replace Vitter. Right. You recently went to a forum. What was that like? Louisiana
Chemical Association, first time we saw 8 major candidates on stage. And the one big takeaway for me was the influence that Trump is having on this race. You saw Troy Hebert get up first and say that he was on the Trump bandwagon, that if he's politically incorrect like Trump and you should leave the room if you don't want to hear it. He's also spending money on billboards promoting Trump alongside his own Senate candidacy. Rob Maness got up and said, I'm different, I'm just like Mr. Trump. And then you saw John Kennedy, who actually, the man was cursing during, the state treasurer was cursing during the forum, which if you remember New Hampshire and Iowa, Donald Trump was grabbing headlines for cursing. You heard Congressman Fleming talking about being anti-establishment. You heard Charles Boustany talking about shuttering the IRS by 2019. These are all topics we've heard from Donald Trump, and it's just amazing how much Trump-like this Senate race is getting, and maybe it's going to make Louisiana elections great again. I don't know. It's at least entertaining.
Maybe so. Well, I'm guessing we're going to be hearing more of that, too.
Right.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Over to Errol now. Second congressional race.
Second congressional district is unusual compared to the other 6 because it was designed to be a black majority district, whereas the other 5 have a white majority. Because of that, it affects the politics. One is that you can pretty much be assured whoever wins the election will be black, but it also, the politics of it is different because the neighboring first congressional district has been a launching pad for people who run for governor or senator. I mean, Vitter, Bobby Jindal, Steve Scalise. I mean, it's been a place for ambitious people who are looking otherwise. To represent the second congressional district, you're probably not going to. It's probably not going to be a stepping stone for the Senate, or probably not a stepping stone for governor. And it could be a stepping stone for something maybe at a national cabinet level. But I think you're starting to see a lot more stability in that seat only. This was Bill Jefferson's old seat, and Cedric Richmond is pretty much an established member. To have Kip Holden, who's the mayor president of Baton Rouge, right now, the district, because it was designed, I mean, the mission was, let's make this black majority, and so it includes Orleans Parish, and it goes up the river, and it includes part of East Baton Rouge Parish, and so Kip Holden, again, former mayor of Baton Rouge, is from that part. It's not the population majority of it, though, and so his base would pretty much be what's left of Baton Rouge, and to try to get the votes along the river. But Cedric Richmond, is fairly well established in Orleans Parish.
So he's popular in Baton Rouge as well. I mean, he has many supporters, including former Congressman Cleo Fields, who still has a good bit of sway in that part of the congressional district.
So do you see a big contest here waged by Kip Holden?
I can't wait to see it, because these two guys are characters. Cedric Richmond is always quick with a joke and quick on his feet. Kip Holden is completely unpredictable, but he ran for lieutenant governor last year, barely raised any money, snuck into the runoff.
He was real quiet.
And real quiet. And if he's going to run for Congress against somebody like Cedric Richmond, he's going to step it up, raise some money, and run a real campaign.
He never really had a chance to win that, but this he conceivably could.
It's going to be tough. I think he's hoping, like you said, to carry Baton Rouge and get the in-between parishes between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. But it's just going to be tough. If Cedric Richmond needs national help, he's going to get it, and he's going to get it in a hurry. Okay.
All right. One to watch. All right, Errol, over to you. Looking ahead.
Well, this is becoming my Triple Crown update, all right? But tomorrow's the Preakness, and last week we mentioned that Exaggerator, which is the local brothers, the Desormeaux brothers will be in there, and he still is. Gunrunner, though, that won the Louisiana Derby, has since been pulled, and so if you want to pull local tomorrow, pull for Exaggerator, who's most of the betting has second place. But I think this is going to be a Triple Crown year, because Nyquist, the horse that won the Derby, looks really powerful and will probably win. And so this might be a big year if you want to see another Triple Crown winner.
Are Benson's horses still in it?
No, Benson's horses is not running. So.
All right. Well, we heard from you. Triple Crown year. All right. Jeremy, thanks.
5 months into the new term of the legislature, we already have 3 open seats so far. 1 in Baton Rouge has been filled. 2 opened up this week. Joe LaPinto, Brian Adams, both in Jefferson Parish. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those races develop. We already have 1 candidate in the LaPinto race. That's Polly Thomas is being encouraged to look at that race. UNO professors, she's run for office before. But those could be some interesting distractions here as we finish up these sessions.
And so they're leaving, these representatives are leaving after these sessions, right? They're going to leave.
Once
summer, they'll be gone.
These 2 sessions conclude, they're going to step down.
Okay, thanks. Don.
Today, Zika, by mid-July, we'll be talking West Nile, too. That's when we usually see the first human case of West Nile virus creep up. So just whatever you can do, don't get bit by mosquitoes, and don't contribute to their breeding in your property.
Right. Thanks, Don. Jeff?
Well, also in the legislature, the city and firefighter pension agreement is moving forward, so be interesting to see if they can finally seal the deal on that after a couple decades of acrimony.
Right, and put this to rest.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, you guys, for being here. Thank you all for joining us, and of course, we want to see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.